I was abducted into a medieval world, and I have to find a way home by making questionable decisions. From dissecting packages for materials, hiding the evidence and burning witches, to managing a graveyard, performing dark rituals, and dealing with the communist donkey. I have to raise my own army of the undead, build a community from the ground up, save up money to start my own tavern, and even fight through dangerous dungeons. Things did not go as I expected. Welcome to my first 100 days in Graveyard Keeper. I was on my way home, going through an ordinary day, when suddenly I found myself in the void. A dark figure said I was a graveyard keeper now, and that I should dig up someone called Jerry. He would help me out. Just like that, I woke up inside a building, in medieval times, away from my home. Without knowing what was happening, I dug out Jerry from his grave. He was a talking skull. I thought this was all a dream, but before I could make sense of it, a sound drew our attention. Checking it out, it turned out to be a donkey pulling a cart. As if things weren't weird enough, it was a talking donkey, unhappy with his job and his boss. The donkey told me he had a fresh delivery from the town and that my job was to take care of it, and so he left. Jerry told me to take the package. I carried it inside. The skull said I should trade some meat for a beer and give it to him. I proceeded to put the thing on the table and got the materials. Doing so made me unlock the recipe for a burger, sandwich, and baked meat. The next task was to bury what was left, so I built a gravesite, lowered the remains, and completed the objective. That's when the bishop arrived. He introduced himself as my superior and told me he would not promote me to cleric until I improved the graveyard's quality. He gave me the recipe for wooden markers and explained that I needed to reach at least 5 quality points. Each time I buried a delivery, I could trade the certificate for money at the tavern. If I ran out of repair kits, I would need to craft more, which meant unlocking additional technologies. Points could be gained by doing almost anything. Now I was able to gather rocks, sticks, and chop down trees. Looking at the technology tree, I realized just how much there was to unlock. Anatomy and alchemy, theology, book writing, farming and nature, smithing, building, and cookery. My current problem was that the graveyard's quality was at -29. Every grave I looked at had negative numbers attached. I began repairing them with the kits I had, one by one, but eventually I ran out of supplies. Later on, we'll have to delve into the dungeon and face all sorts of enemies. That reminds me of a dark fantasy RPG I've been playing lately, where you gather a team of warriors, explore dangerous dungeons, hunt for powerful gear, and much more. Rated Shadow Legends is partnering with Paramount to bring the most radical crossover. Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, Michelangelo, April, and Shredder are joining the game as legendary champions, so you can live out your nostalgic childhood fantasies. From August 21st to November 21st, you can get your hands on the new champions, starting with Michelangelo. Just log in for 7 days starting August 21st to unlock this legendary turtle who spreads debuffs, stuns enemies with trash talk, and dodges their attacks. Plus, you can fuse Donatello, a top support who heals allies and reduces cooldowns, summon Leonardo, Raphael, April, and Shredder through limited time events, and challenge Shredder in the event dungeon to earn the exclusive Chronophage gear set. Players can collect all 6 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles champions to unlock a special bonus reward. This is really nostalgic for me. Personally, I'm most excited to get Shredder. I'm looking forward to see how he plays on the battlefield, and I love its design. Click my link in the description or scan my QR code to get amazing bonuses available only via my link. You would immediately get a huge starter pack with an epic champion Tayrel from the High Elves faction. Also, you'll get another starter pack after reaching level 15, including epic Rector Drath. New players can pick from these 5 promo codes for legendaries. I advise you to pick the promo code Demon Slayer because I love the Dwarves faction. My personal favorite champion is Torment the Cold. I love the look of his armor and his passive skill, which can freeze an enemy each time they receive a buff. These champions are available after downloading via my custom link or QR only, 48 hours after downloading with my link. If you go directly to app stores, you won't get these packages. So come find me under the name Aryan Shadow, join my clan, the Undead Slayers, and I'll see you on the battlefield. The next morning, I awoke to find a spirit standing next to me. His name was Yorick. He told me there was an unpleasant fellow buried in the lower right corner of the graveyard. The man had been cruel in life, and Yorick wanted me to dig him up and throw him in the river. To do so, he gave me an exhumation permission. Apparently, the old keeper used to buy such licenses from the mailbox near the church. Following the arrow, I set out along the dirt road and passed by fields of crops until I arrived at the village, specifically the tavern known as the Dead Horse. Inside, a woman was singing. I went to meet Horadric, the tavern keeper. I offered to sell him the fresh meat, but he refused, saying all meat required the royal stamp. Without it, it was worthless. I could request a stamp from the royal court through the church mailbox, but it would be expensive. He suggested another path. A man called Snake had a fake stamp, and Miss Charm, the singer, might be able to help me find him. Before I left, he asked me to deliver a letter to the blacksmith at the southeastern edge of the village. Miss Charm, however, refused to speak with me. She demanded proof that I was worth her time. Lastly, I talked to a man named Wagner. He was a poet working on a piece, but he lacked paper and ink. He asked me to fetch some for him. By speaking with him, I unlocked the perk Journalist, which allowed me to notice details about people and weave them into stories. I could ask the old astrologer who lived at the lighthouse to the east. Before leaving town, I delivered Horadric's letter to the blacksmith, Crestfold. The message was about the slimes causing trouble. The blacksmith gave me a broken sword, an energy potion, and a whetstone. With the grindstone, I could repair the sword and use it to kill the slimes. He promised me materials in return. All actions consumed energy, whether crafting, gathering, or fighting. I could restore it by eating, drinking potions, or sleeping. After repairing the sword, I hunted the slimes with no problem. Collecting the green jelly, I brought it back. Crestfold rewarded me with iron parts. I also learned how to create both green and red jellies. Heading east, I reached the lighthouse. The keeper there offered to teach me fishing if I brought him moths, which could only be caught at night. On my way back, I met a man named Dig. He wanted honey and promised to teach me how to make cake in exchange. Interesting. Also, by interacting with some eggs, I unlocked recipes for an omelette and fried eggs. Returning to the tavern keeper, I was given a beer as thanks for my help. Back at my cottage, Jerry told me about a cellar beneath the house. This unlocked the ability to gather berries, mushrooms, and apples, along with recipes for pastry dough, bread, and pies. On day 3, I gave the beer to Jerry. He told me to stop bragging about being from another world, warning me that it was dangerous and I should be more careful. When I asked how to return home, he mentioned I should check out the portal at Witch Hill and that some books from the church library might help. Even the astrologer could know a thing or two. Next thing Jerry asked of me was wine. He really liked to drink. I spent some time around the graveyard gathering sticks, mining stone, and cutting wood. Exploring, I found a garden plot. I would need to talk with the tavern owner if I wanted to use it. After grinding enough resources, I unlocked sawing and built a saw horse. This allowed me to turn logs into flitches. I made several of them and gathered stone until I was able to construct a furnace. I ran out of energy partway through, but eating mushrooms and berries gave me just enough strength to finish it. With the furnace ready, I could smelt iron ingots if I had iron ore or scrap. To repair the graveyard, I needed a wooden and stone repair kits, which could be crafted at the carpenter's workbench and the stone cutter, respectively. My next goal was unlocking those. By chopping down trees, I gained enough points to unlock stone working, which gave me the stone cutter blueprint. But I needed nails to actually build it. Nails could be made at a wooden anvil. I took the smithing tree and unlocked the blueprint, though it also requires simple iron parts to build. Those, however, were crafted at the wooden anvil itself, leaving me stuck. Then the donkey dropped off another package. I collected the materials from it and buried it, getting another certificate. That night, I stayed up looking for moths to bring to the lighthouse keeper, but found nothing. Checking the skill tree, I saw that unlocking the insect's blueprint would allow me to gather moths, so that became my new goal. I explored the cellar beneath my house and heard someone. It was a man named Snake. This, the guy I needed to talk to, but the path was blocked. To clear it, I would need wooden wedges, wooden planks, and simple iron parts. Searching around, I looted some flour, wood, and nails, even recipes for baked mushrooms and baked apples. Inside my house, I also discovered I could craft furniture, like a cooking table or a cupboard, though I lacked the resources. Outside, the skull warned me that someone called the Inquisitor had gone up to Witch Hill. Curious, I followed. There I met the Lord himself. He disliked that I was in charge of the graveyard and asked me to join him at the burning ceremony. I lied about my background story just in case and told him I had always wanted to be a graveyard keeper. He warned me of the rising dark cult and said thousands of witches had already been burned. He wanted me to be his friend, someone he could trust more than the villagers. I agreed just to stay safe. He said he would give me tasks next week. The next morning, I finally managed to craft a wooden anvil. With it, I could make nails and simple iron parts, though I first needed iron ingots. That meant I had to find ore. I set out west and stumbled upon a broken bridge. To repair it, I would need planks, flitches, and nails. I spent the day grinding resources and unlocked beekeeping, which gave me the ability to gather beeswax and honey. This skill was required to unlock moth gathering, by the way, so I was one step closer. To unlock insects and gather moths, I needed blue points, but I wasn't sure how to get them yet. Instead, I decided to head into town to see if I could buy wine for Jerry or get some nails for the bridge. On the way, I met a farmer who helped me unlock new cooking recipes. I sold him my flour for some coins, just what I needed. Finally in town, I talked to the blacksmith and bought 2 nails. With these, I would be able to repair the bridge. Then I spoke to the tavern keeper about the garden plot. He told me it had been seized by the merchant for debt repayment, but he gave me a certificate so I could use it if I got the merchant's permission. I also managed to sell the burial certificates to the keeper, which gave me some good coins. His wife, Mrs. Chain, sold recipes for fish, pies, and other foods, though I didn't really need that right now. To be able to repair the bridge, I needed to craft a wooden plank. To do that, I unlocked the woodworking skill. The next step was building a carpenter's workbench, which required simple iron parts. So I went to the blacksmith, where I bought iron ingots. Back home, I processed them into iron parts, and with that, I managed to build the carpenter's workbench and produced my first wooden plank. At last, the bridge was repaired, but night had already fallen, and another package needed handling. The next morning, I headed west, curious to see what lay beyond. Following the dirt road, I reached a waterfall to the north with a fishing spot. It seemed there were others scattered around the village, river, swamp, and sea, but I couldn't fish yet without the rod. Heading further west, I ran into a blockage. Clearing it would take 10 wood wedges, 2 planks, and 4 simple iron parts. Nearby, I discovered the swamp with murky water, and beside it, an ore vein. Finally, iron I could mine. I took as much as I could until my backpack filled up. Back home, I smelted the ore into ingots, but this required a lot of fuel, so I kept chopping trees for sticks. Smelting was painfully slow. By the time I woke, only 1 ingot was ready. While waiting, I crafted some nails and flitch. With those, I built a stone cutter, which could be used for stone repair kits. Those kits also needed clay, making things more complicated. I started doubting if I was even improving the graveyard the right way. My assumption was that better quality came from repair kits, but that wasn't the only case. Soon after, I noticed I could make wooden markers at the sawhorse, and those directly improved the grave quality. I crafted a bunch and began placing them on the graves, replacing the broken crosses with new ones instead of trying to fix them. That seemed like a much better approach. I focused on mass-producing nails so I could craft plenty of wooden markers. I kept placing them and clearing out the twigs, collecting sticks along the way. I made good progress until my rusty shovel broke. Thankfully, I still had the whetstone and I was able to repair it at the grindstone. The bad news was, even when I finished setting all the markers up in the graveyard, the overall quality was still -3, not nearly enough. Looking at what else I could do, I unlocked a theology technology, simple gravestones, that would let me create wooden fences and gravestones. Finally, with the fences all in the right place, the quality reached 5 points. The bishop pronounced me the official keeper of this holy place and prior of the church. He told me to arrange my first sermon. Decorations like candles could earn me more faith, and faith meant power. I unlocked the ability to craft a prayer for faith along with the Berg preacher. For my first sermon, I chose a casual prayer. May the force be with you. that was it, my first ceremony. The bishop also mentioned that the last prior kept books with useful words in the church library. I unlocked another technology, allowing me to build a study table and gather old books. I also gained the perk Curious Mind, letting me study items. Weekly sermons would be my duty from now on. Going downstairs, I checked out the church cellar. It was full of debris and ruined furniture. I cleared it all out, finding a trunk with various items, including a recipe for a speed potion. I discovered the study table, where I tried decomposing some notes, but that didn't work. Instead, I studied a wooden marker, which gave me plenty of blue points. The next day, I found someone in my house, Marquis Theodore Jr. He told me he and others had been sentenced by the Inquisition to burn, though they weren't heretics. They escaped, but not all survived. Now they had set up camp nearby, and they needed my help. He led me there. The place was full of aristocrats who knew nothing about survival. They needed food, drinks, and shelter, and in exchange, they would pay me. Their leader was Master Alaric, a nearly deaf old man who used to be an inquisitor. The camp had a building table. Here I could buy more tents, for example. I'll take a better look at this later. I then buried the package of the day and discovered the royal services beside the church. There I could buy things like an exhumation permit or even citizenship for 10 silver. A royal stamp was available too, but it cost 50 silver. Becoming a rightful citizen or even an aristocrat was possible, but it would take a lot of money. There were more blocked passages beneath the church to clear out, but I would need lots of materials. After some chores, I gathered enough points to unlock the insect's blueprint. This allowed me to collect moths at night. So I went out, gathering flowers, and eventually got the moths I needed for the lighthouse keeper. The next morning, I ran into the blacksmith just outside my home. There was an emergency. Horadric gathered everyone. Vampires had been attacking the village. A third of the victim had already fallen that day. Everyone argued about what to do, though their solutions were mostly self-promotion for their own businesses. The meeting ended without any meaningful progress, and Horadric asked me privately to investigate. I agreed, for a fee, of course. Later, I visited the lighthouse keeper, handed over the moths, and received a fishing rod. I hoped this would let me meet the astrologer, but he wasn't there. I could see a telescope. Maybe he only appeared on certain days. Back home, I talked to the donkey. He accused me of profiting from his labor. He said I was a capitalist now and refused to call me comrade. All because I owned the church. He even left me a gift on the floor. Leaving my home, I stumbled upon a man shouting, "It's time to pay for your crimes, you foul creature." He wanted to fight, telling me to defend myself. His name was Shepard. He thought I was a vampire and kept handing me garlic. I ate it all to prove I wasn't. Still, he kept giving me more. I promised him I would find an actual vampire so he would cut me a break. The victims I needed to interrogate were Chain, the farmer's son, and Rosa. Before investigating, I stopped at the study table to analyze some items. The sheer amount of things to do felt overwhelming. I wasn't sure what quests to prioritize. I questioned the farmer's son first. He said a man entered his house through the window and then left. Then I spoke to Rosa. She said the vampire drank her blood, but almost immediately spat it out, disgusted, because it was Group B, and then fled. What? Finally, I tried speaking with Miss Chain, but she refused to say a word until Horadric apologized. Turns out he claimed he found his wife's lover in their bedroom, and the man escaped through the window. In reality, she was attacked by the vampire. Miss Chain told me to see the astrologer who had dealt with vampires 30 years ago. On my way home, I ran into the donkey again. He was on strike, tired of being oppressed. He refused to bring me corpses unless I met his demands. Better working conditions, greased wheels, a day off, and payment of 5 carats in advance per corpse, left in a special box. If I refused, no more deliveries. Wow. So I built the box next to the road. Though I had no carrots yet, I needed to start growing some crops. I claimed the garden property, fixed it up, and dug the soil, planting my first seeds. There didn't seem to be a watering mechanic, so I just left the carrots to grow. With that done, I headed to the lighthouse and finally found the astrologer. He told me to bring him a skull before he would help, so I unlocked the hard spears technology to be able to extract skulls. The problem was the donkey was still on strike, sick, leaving me without fresh packages. That meant I had to dig one up from the graveyard. After doing so, I put it on a table and got what I needed, plus a couple more things. The next day, the bishop tasked me with delivering 20 bowls in exchange for a cleric's beginner guide. He also offered to buy bread. In addition, I unlocked the ability to gather clay and sand. It was time for a sermon. The people gathered to listen to me, but the response was lukewarm. One man praised it, but most weren't impressed. Still, I gained one faith and a few coins. According to the report, it was a failure. To improve, I needed to increase the quality of my church through theology research, blueprints for benches, candles, and more. At the study table, I analyzed skin, which gave me plenty of blue points. I wanted to study flesh as well, but I ran out of faith and science points. With what I had, I unlocked the church bench and candelabra blueprints. Later, I gathered some clay and set up the potter's wheel to craft ceramic bowls for the bishop. Alongside this, I made some simple iron parts. They were necessary to clear all the blockage down in the cellar. Traveling to town, I met the merchant. I told him Horadric gave me rights to the garden, but we needed to settle terms. He demanded 20 gold. I refused, of course, then lowered it to 5, still too much. Instead, he offered the deal to deliver a batch of carrots, cabbages, and beets to provide was serious. I agreed. The merchant also asked for help with his hiccups. He'd been told hiccup grass from the swamp could cure it. I tried scaring him first, but it didn't work, so I headed into the swamp. The place was a maze. The water blocked my way. It took a while, but I managed to find the hiccup grass. Before bed, I unlocked firewood technology and set up a chopping spot where I made wooden wedges. After getting several wooden planks, I cleared some of the blockage down in the cellar. There were even more obstructions and a locked gate that required the key. I explored further and found ladders. One led me directly into the village. It was so much faster than walking on the surface. The other hatch was still locked for now. While in town, I sold burial certificates at the tavern for some money. I needed to figure out how to get the oil for the donkey. But first, I stopped by the morgue to talk with the skull. He mentioned a helper chained to a wall in the northern part of the church cellar and warned me never to unchain him. Interesting. That northern part must be behind the locked gate I hadn't opened yet. In town, I visited the tavern keeper and bought a teleport stone. Then I met with Dick, who actually sold oil. I bought some from him and used the stone, which let me travel instantly between my home, the tavern, the lighthouse, and the refugee camp. This was a huge time saver. Back home, I gave the oil to the donkey, collected my newly grown crops, and handed them over. As promised, he left me a corpse. After placing it at the table, I repaired the mortuary desk and built a new pallet. I also fixed the corpse hatch, though I wasn't sure what it was for yet. The next day, the donkey returned, telling me I had one last chance to rehabilitate myself in the eyes of enlightened labor. If I refused, he'd burn down my home, graveyard, garden, and church. From now on, we'd communicate through notes. He wanted me to prepare a cookbook for their comrade, the rat chief, and deliver it to the post office along with 5 red apples. To do this, I needed to install a special contraband box, which I built immediately. Since the astrologer was in town today, I teleported to the lighthouse and gave him the skull. He rewarded me with more quests. I could buy ink and paper from him, but it was too expensive, so I held off for now. Then I asked about the portal to go back to my true home. He explained that years ago, a graveyard keeper had obsessed over it. The man eventually disappeared, but before vanishing, he gave the astrologer a special key, which would unlock the metal gate in my cellar. The answers lied in the old keeper's diary behind that gate, and I would need to bring it back to the astrologer once I found it. I wanted to ask him about the vampires, but my relationship with him wasn't high enough. Back home, I went to the cellar gate, but I couldn't use the key yet. It needed to be studied at the table, but I lacked faith, science, and even the right instructions. Not sure where to get that. With the sermon day coming up, I decided to improve the quality of the church. I crafted wooden planks and built some new benches. Here, I realized that the chance of success had increased because of the higher quality of my church. Knowing this, I quickly built 2 more benches, bringing the quality up to 8. More people came to my sermon this time. I gained 4 faith and 3 coins in donations. A success. Back at the cellar, I tried studying a bone, but ran out of science points. I remembered I still had the ceramic bowls, so I handed them over to the bishop. He rewarded me with the cleric's beginner's guide. He was even considering upgrading the church into a big church, which would mean more faith and more money. But for that, both the church and the graveyard had to be perfect, meaning 30 points of quality in the graveyard and 20 in the church. He also asked for a quality fish fillet, which he said could be caught near the waterfall. He also mentioned a rotten ship of the dead floating in the town harbor. I had so many objectives that I didn't even know where to begin. Down in the cellar, I found Snake. I could either threaten him, convince him, or give him the key. The one I had didn't work. I tried threatening him, which was useless. In order to convince him, I needed to gather more faith. I headed to the tavern to see if I could get the wine for Jerry, but I couldn't see it for sale. It was impossible to buy it. It was probably locked behind the higher tier. I needed to trade more with Oradric to unlock it. Near the lighthouse, I picked some apples and left them in the contraband box for the donkey, completing one of his demands. I still needed to write a cookbook, which meant unlocking the writing skill and the ability to craft paper. The desk could be built under the church, but I needed more nails for that. I spent the rest of the day gathering and processing resources. On day 27, I gave the merchant some hiccup grass. In return, he told me about a witch living in the western swamp. He had lost his sense of taste and wanted me to ask her for a cure. I also noticed he was selling grape seeds. I bought 4, planning to grow them back at the garden. But when I tried planting them, I couldn't. Maybe they were some kind of advanced crop. Back at the morgue, I built another pallet to increase corpse storage. Then cleared out more blockage in the cellar. I also made some gravestones to increase the quality of my graveyard. While working on a package, I messed up badly. The quality dropped so much, I couldn't just put that in the graveyard, so I needed another way to get rid of it. I carried the body and tossed it into the river. Then, out of nowhere, the skull appeared from the bushes asking what I was doing. I told him about the ghost who woke me up the other day. Jerry laughed, saying the ghost couldn't actually do anything to me. He told me the best way to get rid of the body was to burn it, not throw it in the river, since it flowed directly into town. He explained I would need fire and wood. He mentioned the place he used for meditation, called the Stone Garden. I went and checked it out. I had to set the place up. It required stone and river sand. After gathering everything, I completed it. I could use it to meditate myself, recovering energy and passing time. I needed to prepare for tomorrow's sermon, so I built another bench. When I woke up, Yorick, the ghost, was waiting. He was pleased I had tossed the corpse into the river, but he said he felt lonely and regretted not being a better person in life. He explained that each corpse had sense and good deeds, represented as red and white skulls. To improve the graveyard, I needed to avoid red skulls. By removing organs or embalming, I could influence the skulls. Interesting. I finished crafting more iron parts and used them to build a candelabra. With that, my church quality reached 10. I chose a casual prayer again, and this time I had a 100% success chance. The sermon went perfectly. Tons of people liked it and donated. I broke my own record. With all the faith I had gathered, I decided it was time to visit Snake. But when I looked for him, he was gone. In the meantime, I focused on clearing the blockage in the cellar. I unlocked the blueprint for the circular saw, which would let me create wooden beams. Unfortunately, I couldn't unlock it yet since I needed more red points. So I went back to grinding, mining ores and working at anything that gave me red points. My rusty shovel eventually broke, but I fixed it at the grindstone and pushed on until I ran out of energy. Before heading home, some bats attacked me. With little energy left, I couldn't fight them off and had to retreat. I went to sleep. Returning to the cellar, I talked to Snake. Using the faith I had accumulated, I convinced him to trust me. He wanted my help opening the gate. The good thing was, he had the instructions I needed. I brought them to the study table, but I lacked science points to study them, and I had no idea how to earn those yet. Night fell, and the bats came back. This time, I fought them and managed to collect bat wings. The next morning, my carrots were ready. I harvested the crops and planted even more. I realized I wasn't using the garden to its full potential, special, so I went to the farmer and bought more seeds. Back at the garden, I planted everything. With the ingots I smelted, I finally made some nails and used them to build a desk in the church cellar. Here I could craft clean paper if I had a ruined book and river sand. I could also make notes from stories using pen, ink, and paper. That wasn't all. I also could make chapters from those notes and even prepare the cookbook for the donkey. It was overwhelming. I decided to start with clean paper. It required a ruined book and river sand. I already had 4 ruined books in my chest and plenty of sand, so I made my first batch, 2 sheets. It rewarded me with a blue point, just what I needed. I crafted even more. The description mentioned that a clean paper could be decomposed at the study table to gain science points. I brought them there and finally I had the science points I needed. With them, I was able to study the keeper's key. This turned it into an active key. Since I had points to spare, I studied whatever else I had in my inventory, like bat wings. The next morning, I went down into the cellar, but Snake wasn't there. To clear the blockage near the gate, I needed a wooden beam. To craft one, I had to unlock the circular saw blueprint, which I did. But the saw required complex iron parts. To make those, I first had to unlock advanced forging, which meant gathering more red points. So I spent the whole day grinding until I finally unlocked it. I was ready to set up the anvil, but my yard had no space left. Expanding the yard was an option, though that also required complex iron parts. In the end, I just removed the old wooden anvil to make room. With the new one, I could now craft the iron parts. In the morning, I went down to the cellar, but once again, Snake was missing. I kept producing more materials. I finally managed to actually expand the yard, which gave me a lot more space to build. Then I held a sermon at the church. People seemed to enjoy it once again. Afterward, I harvested my crops and replanted. Later, I tried fishing near the waterfall. Different baits gave different fish, and the both had a guaranteed chance at one specific type. I casted my line into the water and listened to the sound of the waterfall. It was quite relaxing. I caught a perch and then a gudgeon. The next day, I visited the merchant and delivered the carrots, cabbages, and beets, finishing my objective. He mentioned the ship of the dead again, saying it was stuck and couldn't leave. The merchant also spoke about wanting to work for the king and suggested we worked together. But first, I needed a trade license, only purchased through the royal service box near the church. To buy it, I first had to become a rightful citizen. That required 30 points of relationship, which I already had, but also a payment of 3 silver coins, which I didn't have. After that, I would need 65 points of relationship to actually purchase the trade license. There was so much to unlock. Finally, I found Snake in the cellar. I gave him the key and together we opened the gate. We walked down the hallway and then I entered a room. I woke up back in my room. I needed to return for the diary. Snake questioned how I managed to survive. I told him I had no idea. He was furious, saying it was unfair that I was immortal. Then he gave me a task, to gather a bucket of blood and 5 bloody nails from the first levels of the dungeon. Before going down, I found someone in a cell, chained to a wall, groaning. This was the helper the skull had mentioned. His name was Gunter. He asked me to hit him with my sword, since he hadn't felt anything in so long. He was a zombie, made by his old master through magic. Many others had been created as well, though only he remained here. Gunter explained that I should raise more zombies to help. They could gather resources, craft, and even transport materials for me. One of them was buried under the rocks along the northern path of the forest. I searched the rubble next to Gunter and found both the resurrection table blueprint and some zombie juice. Checking the place he mentioned, I dug through the rocks, uncovering a body. It was another zombie. I carried it all the way back to the church cellar. I wasn't sure where I could build the resurrection table, couldn't figure it out. So I first built a circular saw, which let me make wooden beams. With those, I could start clearing the passage between my house cellar and the church cellar. After a good amount of work, the entire place was finally cleared and open. Before resting, I stopped by Witch Hill. The Inquisitor was there, but I had arrived too late. On day 42, I realized the mortuary was the place to set up the resurrection table. I gathered complex iron parts and built it. I tried placing the zombie corpse under the table, but it didn't work. It remained lifeless. Instead, I could place a regular body. To perform a resurrection, I needed a zombie juice and 10 faith. I didn't have enough. I needed to wait until the next sermon. Exploring the northern part of the map, I came across a cabin in the woods. There was even a bed I could use. Interesting. I could also build a stone stockpile and a stone cutter here if I wanted. Nearby, I found a marble deposit. Not only that, I discovered the entrance to a mine, but it was filled with toxic gases. I needed someone who didn't need to breathe. Zombies. Back at the church, I gave my sermon before the sunset. Then I realized I could put the zombie at any of my stations. In the top right corner of the screen, you can see his work efficiency. I could order him to produce things like wooden planks and he would do it. Interesting. I wondered if zombies could chop trees. I assumed they would, but I wasn't sure how to give the order. Looking at the skill tree, I saw a perk called zombie woodcutting, but before unlocking it, I needed the woodcutter technology. That required more blue points. I realized I had been so caught up in everything else that I had forgotten about the dungeon. There were 15 levels to choose from, but I could only enter the first one. Inside, I broke every jar and box I came across, while fighting bats and slimes. My energy ran out quickly. I had no food in my inventory, so I couldn't keep going. I needed to return better prepared. Before going to the surface, I managed to grab the keeper's diary, the item the astrologer wanted. Instead of only bringing food for energy, I thought it would be smarter to craft a better weapon. I unlocked the weapons skill, which let me create a new sword and iron armor. I needed hemp rope, which was crafted at the church workbench. The problem was I hadn't built that bench yet, so I gathered flitch, nails, and iron parts, finally crafting the station. Here, I could make paper from bat wings and, more importantly, create the rope. But I didn't have any hemp, so I settled on making pigskin paper. I turned that into clean paper, and at the study table, I decomposed it for science points. Going to the village, I bought some hemp from Dig. With that, I was able to finally craft the hemp rope. The last thing I needed were more iron parts and ingots. I got to work. On day 46, the crops were ready to harvest, so I grabbed everything. I also studied some gravestones, which gave me a ton of blue points. Finally, I was able to make a sword. I gathered the materials, forged it, and equipped it. I set my sights on crafting iron armor next. For that, I needed skin and simple iron parts. I took a package and stripped what I needed, then tossed it into the river. The problem was that I didn't have enough skin. I needed another package, which meant paying the donkey 10 carrots. Thing is, I only had 7. I headed to the farmer, bought 3 more, and sold him my cabbages while I was there. Back home, I planted new seeds and placed the carrots into the crate, hoping the donkey would show up soon. In the meantime, I went to see the astrologer and gave him the diary. At last, I asked how to open the portal on which hill. He told me I needed to craft a spirit laser, though he didn't even know what a laser was. It had to be built on the pedestal by the portal in 2 parts, an emitter and the barrel. The emitter itself required 3 items: a mirror of pride, an eternal burning coal, and a salty fork. According to the diary, these could all be found in town, but the rest of the text was smeared with something sticky. The old man said he'd need acid and restoration tools to clean it. I unlocked the recipe for acid. He mentioned an old woman in the swamp who sold chemical ingredients. As for the restoration tools, the Inquisition had destroyed them all, but Snake could know where to get some. I headed out to find the witch. The swamp was a maze. It took a long while to figure out the correct path. Eventually, I found a spot where I could build a bridge. I'd need to bring the materials next time. Finally, I reached her. Her name was Clotho, and she had lost her memory. Clotho had a note written to herself: "In case you lose your memory, just boil the cauldron with incense and a bee. Drink the result. Good luck from your past you." Thing is, the cauldron was gone. I could either brew the potion myself or bring her a new cauldron. A blacksmith might know how to make one. She promised to help me if I helped her. I unlocked blueprints for alchemy stations, and she also asked for a silver star pumpkin, offering to teach me pumpkin soup in return. Turns out the potion she needed was a health potion. Luckily, I had one back home in my chest. First, I took the package the donkey had dropped off and extracted the skin. Then, I headed to the church for the weekly sermon. Afterwards, I was finally able to craft the iron armor and equip it. I also worked on nails, flitch, and wooden planks. planks, but ran out of energy before finishing. Once rested, I completed the nails, then returned to the swamp. This time, I built the bridge, which made the path much easier. I brought the health potion to Clotho too. She drank it, and her memory returned. Now, I could buy tons of stuff from her, including potion, recipes, powders, and even acid. I asked about helping the merchant. Turns out Clotho didn't curse him, it was someone else. She said only the witch who cursed him could break it. Still, she offered a recipe that might help him. Salt and health solution combined. I unlocked the technology to create spices. Later, I studied body parts at the study table. Each gave me tons of blue points. I had over 100. I spent them by unlocking the soft spares and important parts skills. Before heading into the dungeons again, I wanted to bring some food and make sure my inventory was mostly empty. But my chests were running out of space. Luckily, my crops were ready, just in time. With the food placed in my hotbar, I descended once more. On the first level, I realized the monsters I had slain before stayed dead, which was a relief. I killed a slime, then more bats, breaking everything I could for loot. I found a lot of materials, even a health potion. Eventually, I located the stairs, but I couldn't advance until I cleared all enemies. I wandered through the maze, searching for the last ones. Once they were gone, I descended. By now, it was past midnight, and I had already run out of food, but I pressed on. I ran into a library full of bookshelves. I searched every shelf, but there was nothing to take. Once again, finding all the enemies was a bit frustrating. Eventually, I was out of energy and out of food. I had no choice but to retreat. At least, next time, I could start from the third level. In order to buy more food, I needed money, so I sold firewood to the people at the village, and then bought carrot seeds from the farmer. Back home, I planted everything. To gain some extra coins, I buried some bodies in the graveyard, earning burial certificates. I also sold simple iron parts and nails to the blacksmith, then bought more seeds. After my prayer, I kept doing the same thing, growing my garden even more. Once I had enough carrots, I returned to the dungeon. On the third level, I encountered a new enemy. They looked like bees. Killing them dropped powders of different kinds. The problem was, I had forgotten to empty my inventory before coming, so it filled up almost instantly. Still, I managed to clear the floor and descend further. With my low health and full backpack, I retreated home. Out of space, I decided to unlock the trunk blueprint and build another chest to help with storage. My crops were ready again. I harvested a big load of carrots. I headed to the fourth dungeon level. A new monster appeared, some strange creature with blades for arms. I fought carefully, dodging and timing my attacks like a dance. I had no healing potions, so every mistake was dangerous. Thankfully, I found one hidden in a jar and drank it just in time. It was past midnight again, but I kept pushing. The level was packed with enemies, but I managed to fight my way through and descended further. I found blue slimes and even silver veins to mine, but my health was critical. I was one hit away from death. I escaped before it was too late. Outside, I ran into Snake. I handed him the 5 bloody nails he wanted. He still demanded a bucket of blood before dealing further. I asked about illegal goods like the fake royal stamp, but my relationship with him wasn't strong enough. However, he did give me a town pass. I headed south of the village and showed it to the guard watching the town entrance. He let me through. I woke up in a bed. Jerry said this was an ancient rage at work, some great power that didn't want me entering the town. The skull suggested I talk to Snake for help. After harvesting some more crops, I returned to the dungeon to continue Snake's quest. On level 5, I had to fight quite a lot of enemies, but in the end, I reached a chest. Inside, there was a bucket of blood, exactly what Snake wanted. I moved on, descending to the next floor. Here, I encountered a new type of bat, like a lava bat. I also found some gold ore, but my inventory was full. The dungeon had so many materials that managing them was quite cumbersome. I built another trunk outside since I was running out of space again. I already had Snake's item, so now it was just a matter of time waiting for him to visit. Still, curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to see what lay deeper underground. I returned to level 6. It was already past midnight when I managed to clear it and advance to the next floor. There, I saw a new enemy, a spider, and it shot webs that nearly killed me. Somehow, I escaped with barely any health left. I couldn't rest yet though, since it was time for the weekly sermon. I gave it as usual, but again, no one donated. That was because my graveyard quality was terrible. I needed to start being more careful with the bodies I buried. To improve this, I unlocked the Gentle Butcher perk, which will reduce the chance of mistakes when extracting body parts. Then I worked on unlocking zombie woodcutting, though first I had to get the woodcutter skill. With that, I could finally chop down large trees, gain extra logs, and make more firewood and wedges. That opened the way to zombie woodcutting. I built a sawmill in the northern forest, which needed flitch, nails, and an axe for the zombie worker. To make proper tools, I unlocked the crafting skill, bought new axes, equipped one for myself, and forged nails. Once everything was in place, the whole station was ready. I put the zombie to work there. Checking the place out, I noticed a porter station. Another zombie could be assigned there to hold resources directly into my stockpiles. To have more zombies, I needed more corpses. I placed carrots in the stash for the donkey, fixed the corpse hatch outside so deliveries will slide directly into the morgue, which would help with decay. While exploring my property, I stumbled across another area I hadn't noticed before, a vineyard. Here I could plant the grape seeds I had collected and eventually maybe make wine for Jerry. Soon the donkey arrived with another package. This time it went straight inside thanks to the hatch. The corpse had 2 red skulls and 3 white skulls. Before processing it, I wanted to unlock the embalming skill tree. To do that, I first needed to learn about embalming liquids, which allowed me to make acid injections. This would help improve corpse quality. With that step done, I unlocked embalming itself, plus zombie logistics to build porter stations. Finally, I delivered the bucket of blood to Snake. He ordered me to stay and watch as he performed the summoning ritual. He then demanded I fetch the Necronomicon from the astrologer. If I did, he promised to owe me big. Since our relationship had improved, I also asked him for the royal stamp, which he gave me for free. This will let me legally sell meat. Before leaving, I asked about the rare items, the Mirror of Pride, the Eternal Burning Coal, and the Salty Fork. He'd help if I reached 60 approval points with him. With the stamp in hand, I went to the dead horse to speak to the tavern keeper. Now I could prepare meat at the kitchen table, wrap it in paper, stamp it, and sell it. Back home, I sliced some meat, crafted a paper from bat wings, and wrapped the cuts into stamped packages. Each one sold for 64 bronze coins. I made multiple of them and sold everything to Horadric. That same day, the donkey dropped off another package. Its quality was poor, 3 red skulls and 2 white skulls, so I used it for extractions. That's when I realized removing certain parts reduced the red skulls, increasing the white ones, leaving me with no red and 4 white skulls. Perfect for resurrection. I placed it on the table and created my second zombie. The next morning, I checked the sawmill. The undead had already filled the storage with logs. I placed the new one at the porter station. He immediately began hauling them all the way back to my house. I followed him and watched as he neatly dropped logs into my stockpile. I wanted to speak to the astrologer about the Necronomicon, but I needed 40 points of approval. I only had 20. To improve that, I would need to bring him acid and restoration tools first. I studied one of the new body parts I had extracted earlier, earning many blue points. Though I ran out of faith to keep studying, I needed a more efficient way to generate more faith. Today was preaching day. I usually gave a casual prayer, but I wanted to try making something different. On my desk, I could craft a prayer for faith or even a prayer for repose, but both required a good amount of faith to create. I checked the theology skill tree. Turns out stronger prayers needed higher church quality in order to be successful, so I had to keep improving the place. I unlocked Business of Faith and Prize of Faith, gaining a perk that earned me extra money from ceremonies. I also unlocked Power of Faith, allowing me to build a confessional and wooden shrines. Lastly, I chose Illumination of Faith to craft better candelabras and stained glass windows. It was a lot to build. First, I gave my usual sermon, then I set up a confessional inside the church. It added a lot of quality, so I built a second one, and with that, I reached 20 points of church quality. After speaking with the bishop, my relationship with him improved. If I could bring the graveyard to the same standards, we'd be able to upgrade the church. To move forward, I unlocked stone gravestones, letting me build prayer gravestones and fences. I needed to unlock the stone cutter too in order to make them. To upgrade, I had to learn stone carving, which required a lot of points. I spent days studying, working, grinding by processing materials, studying without stopping. After making a new pickaxe, I finally reached the points to unlock stone carving and set up the new stone cutter. Before setting out to mine some stone, I stopped at Witch Hill to see the Inquisitor. I seemed to be early because he wasn't there. The guards told me to stay away, claiming they were preparing an ambush for cultists. I couldn't use the pedestal while they were around. Soon after, the Inquisitor arrived. He said they were about to burn another witch and wanted my help. To gain his trust, I had to provide firewood and flyers. The flyers required pen and ink, but I didn't know the recipe yet, so I only delivered the firewood. That was enough to earn some of his trust, and he gave me a scroll granting permission to expand the graveyard. I returned home and unlocked the new expansion. It was overrun with bushes and dead trees. I worked clearing everything up until my rusty shovel broke. It was a good excuse to finally craft a better one. I continued clearing the graveyard, earning green points in the process. I also bought my rightful citizen papers, but the trade license the merchant mentioned was really expensive, even the building permissions. The following day, I mined some stone under the rain. With it, I crafted better gravestones. This was a great way of granting blue points. I replaced the old wooden markers, but the corpses were really poor quality. Most with only 1 or 0 white skulls. Even the best gravestones couldn't help in those cases. When the sermon came, many people attended and gave me plenty of faith, though no money at all. By swapping out the wooden crosses, I improved the graveyard quality to 5 points, but once again, I ran out of stone. Before setting out, I built more trunks for storage, then harvested my grapes. To make wine, I would need to unlock wine making, which I didn't have enough points for yet. I spent a lot of time mining stone and needed tons of them. Turning them into gravestones, I was able to raise the graveyard's quality. I meditated a bit to recover energy, even took a nap, and continued working. I managed to reach 50 points of quality by now. To push even further, I also built stone fences, stacked some carrots for the donkey, and then went to the dead horse to sell firewood. With the profit, I bought red wine for Jerry. At the blacksmith, I sold the nails and iron ingots, earning 11 silver coins, my highest amount so far. Back home, I processed the package, removing the blood and fat. This left it with 5 white skulls and no red ones. I buried the body, earning another burial certificate, and placed more fences. This finally raised the graveyard quality to 30. Before the day ended, I brought Jerry his wine, only to realize he wanted silver star wine, not bronze. I returned to the tavern, bought the right one, and gave it to him. Jerry enjoyed it, but now he wanted cognac. He said I would need to find an old keg buried somewhere between the village and the lighthouse. If I dug it up, he promised to reveal something important this time. I started searching for it, digging in several spots around the village. Along the way, I found the camp and met a gypsy baron. He promised to teach me a family recipe if I brought him good fish fillet. I kept looking for the cognac, and after some random finds, I finally uncovered something. Jerry appeared out of nowhere. The thing wasn't cognac at all. It was the old keeper's archaeological machine. This device could even help me return home. Before I could use it, a man stopped me, saying only landowners were allowed to dig in village property. He said I was too poor to bribe him, leaving me no choice but to return home. I told Jerry about what happened. He suggested starting a tavern on top of the dig site. That way, we'd have a cover, and we could dig out the tavern cellar and use the machine there. Plus, it could make us money. The machine could maybe reveal something about Jerry's past. Checking the available quests, I remembered the refugee camp. I had forgotten completely about it. There was so much content that it was easy to get lost. They needed me to build a well and a tent, but for that, I required silk. I didn't see any skill tree for it, so I'd figured I'd have to buy some. In the meantime, I unlocked the writing supplies technology so I could create ink. I needed it to make flyers for the Inquisitor, by the way. To make ink, I needed conical flasks and black paint. Black paint required an alchemy workbench, which itself required advanced conical flasks made in a tier 2 furnace. That was a lot. So I unlocked advanced smelting and prepared to build the new furnace. I also asked the tavern keeper about buying land for my own tavern. He demanded an absurd price, but suggested registering it in someone else's name to lower the cost. I went to talk to Dick, and he didn't seem to mind. With his name, the price dropped to 30 silver. Still, I only had half that amount, so I needed to work. I sold some iron parts to the blacksmith and ended the day with 15 silver coins. Before going to sleep, I checked the furnace requirements: more complex iron parts and pigskin paper. After crafting the necessary materials, I built the furnace. But my recipes were quite limited, so I unlocked glass, then glass blower, and finally glass blower 2, which gave me the recipe for the advanced conical flasks I needed. Talking to the merchant, I saw he sold silk. I bought 2 for the refugee camp, then sold items to the blacksmith for extra money. At the camp, I built a residential tent, completing one of their requests. Next, they wanted a well, but that required happiness, and their morale was at 0. They needed food and water to be happy. I left some buckets of water and some fish fillet in their storage and hoped that would raise their spirits. On day 82, I crafted more things and mined more stones. Checking on the refugees, their happiness had barely moved, sitting at almost 0. Maybe they didn't like fish fillet. I had the well materials ready, but without their happiness, I couldn't build it. I learned that each refugee consumed 3 drops of water and 30 energy worth of food every day. For now, I just focus on the furnace again. To make conical flasks, I first needed glass, which required river sand and water. I collected both and started making it. While that happened, I gave the camp more water. Once the furnace was finished, I made my first batch of conical flasks. The refugees didn't seem to be eating the fish fillets, so I gathered berries, mushrooms, and anything edible I could find, and left those in their storage instead. Later, I bought more seeds from the farmer and planted carrots back at home. When I checked the camp again, I saw they had eaten the berries and mushrooms. We finally were getting somewhere. I went back and gathered more to keep them supplied, even catching some fish. By the end of the day, more flasks were ready at the furnace. But I needed 3 to advance. I kept smelting while keeping the camp fed and hydrated. Finally, I had enough to make the advanced conical flasks. While those were processing, I planted more seeds in the garden and set up a trunk nearby to keep everything organized. The bishop was here. He told me he was no longer disgusted to be in my graveyard, and if I kept everything at this level, I'd be able to upgrade to a big church. Next, I unlocked cremation, which gave me a new way to dispose of bodies. I built the crematorium, then collected my advanced conical flasks and used them to make the alchemy workbench. Unfortunately, I was missing recipes and could only make spices for now. The following day, I was surprised to see that the church wasn't upgraded. Then I discovered I needed a building permit, which cost 20 silver. To raise money, I crafted packages of meat to sell at the tavern and also sold more items to the blacksmith. I tried making tools to see if that was more profitable, but turns out the blacksmith wouldn't buy those from me. It was a waste. Frustrated, I decided to focus on exploring the dungeon. I gathered my harvested crops and went to level 7. The spiders there were brutal. I barely held on as I fought through the enemies. Then it happened. I was killed by one of them. I checked the technology tree to see what I could improve. Steel armor was the next step, but unlocking it required another technology. I needed more points. I spent the day grinding and selling to the blacksmith. After all that effort, I finally had 31 silver coins. Instead of buying the land for the tavern, I decided to first get the building permit for 20 silver. That should let me upgrade the church once the bishop returns. Since I was short on money again, I kept selling stuff. Having gathered enough points, I unlocked the steel weapons skill. To actually craft the full steel armor set, I needed a carpenter's workbench tier 2 and an anvil tier 2. That meant making steel ingots. Those required graphite. To get graphite, I had to unlock mining and precious metals in the building tree. It all felt like a labyrinth. Every step required something else. I spent the next morning grinding more points, then unlocked mining and precious metals. I checked on the church, but it still wasn't upgraded. What I needed to do first was deliver the quality fish fillet to the bishop. I bought some from the lighthouse keeper and handed it over. Finally, the bishop upgraded the church. He told me I had to be a rightful citizen to actually preach there. Thankfully, I had the documents stored in a chest. I retrieved them and returned to him. Everything was good to go. The bishop said we should build a cathedral next. To do that, the church needed to be at 50 quality and the graveyard to 800. The number was ridiculous, but thankfully he lowered it to 200. Still a lot. For this sermon, everyone gave me donations. We broke another record. In total, there was 1 silver coin and 25 bronze. Not bad. In order to craft graphite, I needed coal. The recipe showed it was crafted at the zombie mine. Looking at the skill tree, I found the zombie mining skill and unlocked it. That meant I had to raise more undead. I realized I had forgotten a body on a pallet. Its quality had dropped too much, so I used it for extractions and then cremated it. After that, I restocked the carrots for the donkey to bring me more packages. I harvested the crops and then visited the refugee camp. Their happiness was increasing, very slowly, but at least it was going up. I left them all my beets, some cabbage, and extra water, hoping it would help. Later, a new package arrived. I resurrected it into another zombie. I took him to the quarry near the mine, but the entrance wasn't usable yet. I had to construct the mining station myself, which required a pickaxe and nails. The next package had 6 white skulls. I've never seen one like that. Since I didn't have enough faith to resurrect it, I buried it in the graveyard instead. Having gathered all the materials, I forged a new pickaxe and returned to the cabin in the woods. There, I built the thing and the zombie started to work. A light appeared inside the mine entrance, showing he was active. I went exploring. Near the farmer's wheat fields, I thought I saw coal south of the cliff, but I couldn't find the way down. After that, I found more near the quarry, an actual coal deposit. I mined as much as I could. I returned home and upgraded my old furnace. With it, I was able to start making graphite. All that was left was waiting for it to finish processing. Another goal was saving enough money to start my tavern, and iron ore was the key for that. The zombie at the mine could gather it, but without a porter, it was useless. I first built an iron ore stockpile. Then a porter station, moving the zombie that had been carrying logs there. Now he would haul everything back home. At first, nothing arrived because I was missing a stockpile on my own property, so I built one. At the quarry, coal also needed somewhere to go, so I built a trunk. That fixed everything. Now I had a steady supply of iron ore and coal. To progress with the quests, I bought pen and ink from the astrologer and made 10 flyers, completing the requirement for the Inquisitor. I also bought extra ink for the poet at the tavern. Back at the church cellar, I crafted the paper and handed everything to Wagner. He began writing a poem, then asked for a bottle of Silver Star wine to help him with the story. Horadric congratulated me on the new church, saying it would help him expand the tavern. I bought a red wine from him, sold a burial certificate, and brought the wine to Wagner. He gave me a story in return. Interesting. During the weekly sermon, I earned another silver coin, but I needed far more to fund the tavern, so I sold more items to the blacksmith and stocked carrots in the stash for the donkey. At the tavern, I spoke to Mrs. Charm, spending 5 fates to be confident. I demanded an apology, saying I was a respected graveyard keeper, and it worked. I told her about Snake. She then handed me a fake coin, asking me to throw it in his face and report back how he reacted. Finishing the day, I sold a firewood to Horadric and stones to Cory. Back at the refugee camp, the people were happy enough for me to build them a well. With that task complete, the Marquis said the next priority was a garden, since more people were coming and food was needed. Meanwhile, after selling everything I could to the villagers, I finally reached 30 silver coins. With that, I went to Horadric and bought the land for my tavern. He didn't take it well, asking if I intended to compete with him. Even then, he said I should talk to Cory and his brother Tress, the best specialist in construction. The next day, I threw Snake the fake coin, and he told me Miss Charm used to be sweet and naive. I then visited Cory to talk about building the tavern. He explained the Royal Council had hired them to build a barn, but their suppliers were lazy. If I wanted their help, I had 2 options: pay them enough to quit working for the council, or become their supplier so the barn would be finished faster. I went with the latter. They needed 12 simple iron parts, wooden planks, and nails. I started smelting iron ingots back home, but it would take a while. In the meantime, I delivered the flyers to the Inquisitor. With that done, we watched the burning. But the crowd quickly lost interest and just left. The Inquisitor then asked if I knew how to grow grapes. He granted me the rights to plant them on the eastern slope of Wedge Hill. He told me to make wine and bring him 10 bottles to motivate the guards. Afterward, I returned to Cory and handed him all the materials. He told me to come back tomorrow. Later, I went to Jerry. He accused me of working with the Inquisition. I of course denied it, explaining I was only trying to get home. He said I was honest and things were good. After burning another package, I went back to Cory. The barn was complete, but he said they would only begin construction on my tavern once I paid 50 silver coins. I realized I needed to step up my game. More money was the only way forward. There was so much to do. I felt like I was only scratching the surface. So many systems, missions, stories. These were my first 100 days in Graveyard Keeper. If you'd like to see more, please let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to use my Raid Shadow Legends link in the description or scan my QR code on screen to get exclusive bonuses, and you'll help support the channel. Thank you for watching.